guys, welcome back to my channel and the blanket fort. Today I'm gonna do a book review of Purge by Sofi Oksanen. This is a historical fiction that takes place in the in the 40s, 50s, and then in the 90s in Estonia. So part of it is before, during World War II, and then some of it is kind of like the aftermath of the Cold War, if you will. And it's really interesting. It's really well written. You kind of go back and forth between the two times with the two main authors. Oh, I didn't even read the synopsis. Okay, hold on. So, the synopsis is, deep in an overgrown Estonian forest, two women, one young, one old, are hiding. Zara, a murderer and a victim of sex trafficking, is on the run from her brutal captors. Elida, a communist sympathizer and a blood traitor, has endured a life of abuse. Oh my gosh. Has endured a life of abuse at the country's brutal Soviet years. Their survival now depends on exposing the one thing that kept them hidden. The truth. Boy, was that hard to read. Okay, anyway, so that's the synopsis. So, as implied by the synopsis, there are a few trigger warnings I should warn you about. The first, obviously, is sex trafficking, and then any kind of, ensuing things of sex trafficking, so, rape, violence, abuse. There's a lot of trauma too, so obviously Zara has a lot of PTSD and stuff like that. There's also a lot of well, I guess that's it for trigger warnings. The rest would be more of motives and stuff. One of the reasons I read this book was because I wanted to read a book by a Finnish author. As you may or may not know, I'm doing a project where I want to read a book whose author is from each country in the world. I started it in 2018. I should update you guys on that. But anyway, and so I picked up this book. I thought it would be pretty representative. But one thing I do know about Finnish as a language is that it's a lot of symbolism and imagery. And so I think maybe at some points it didn't really translate, or it translated a little bit awkwardly into English, or maybe the translation was a little too literal to where the phrasing was a little bit weird. I don't know. See, that's the thing with translated books, is sometimes you don't really know if it's the author's writing style or if it's the translation that makes it a little bit weird. And then the other thing is that the first chapter, or maybe the first two chapters, are very descriptive to a fault, where at one point, again, it's in the two first chapters, it's not a spoiler, but when Elida finds Zara, she describes Zara for a page and a half to 2 pages, and it's just kind of painful. Because you're like, okay, we get what she looks like, we get how she's sitting, we get and then the rest of the book is mostly action. And it's actually kind of weird because it feels like two completely different authors wrote both things. It's actually, I was very taken aback when I was reading that, and then when I finished reading it. That's really the only two things I didn't really like about this book, to be honest. So one thing this book is really good at is taking a bunch of characters from the same family with a bunch of similarities, a bunch of same upbringing and everything, and putting them in a situation like the Soviets taking over, and rolling with the whole what would you do to survive narrative, and it just kind of shows how everyone's kind of actions, you don't really feel bad. I almost don't feel bad for any of the characters regardless of their actions, because it's just it's you gotta do what you gotta do, there's not a single character in here, I don't think. No, that's a lie. But not the main characters. When it comes to the main characters, I don't think I could really be mad at them, sort of. Some things I'm kind of yeah, you shouldn't have done that. But also, it's like a given the circumstances situation. I accidentally, I totally picked up this book by accident in terms of what's going on in the world right now with the war in Ukraine and everything, but I think it was a good, like, a good time to read this book, if anything, just for a reminder of history, Soviet history. Honestly, I'm not super familiar, like, you may know I grew up in France and everything, and we did a lot of World War II, 20th century in general, but mostly from Western Europe's perspective. We did some Eastern Europe, but not that much, and honestly, this was a really good read. And I wrote a perfect recap of my thoughts on the book in my little notebook. Here is my little teeny tiny one-sentence description of what happened, or what this book is all about. Oh, there are 5 parts. I wrote this when I done reading part 4. So, just finished reading part 4 of the book, and OMFG. This book is an Eastern European wartime version of Desperate Housewives. Hot damn! So that's been my review of Purge. I absolutely recommend it. Obviously steer clear if you don't want to read about sexual assault or anything, or like sex trafficking, anything ensuing. But if you can get past that, there is a pretty explicit scene of rape, by the way. But if you can get past that, I absolutely recommend this. 5 out of 5 from me. And yeah, let me know what you think below. Like the video if you did, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!